morning, everyone. Today we're going to talk about the IB profile principle. So, the IB definition of this profile is the student act with integrity and honesty with a strong sense of fairness, justice, and respect for the dignity of the individual, groups, and communities. They take responsibility for their own actions and the consequences that accompany. So, I think this is a very important attribute, and I found two quotes that seem to really summarize and give me a better idea of what it means to be principled and how to develop this sense of integrity in our students. So the first one is by Eisenhower and it says, "The supreme quality for leadership is unquestionably integrity. Without it, no real success is possible, no matter whether it is in a section gang, a football field, in an army, or in an office." So I think it's essential for students to realize that integrity is the most important quality if they want to be successful in life and not just have an impact in themselves, but to have a very good footprint in wherever they go and whatever endeavor they commit to. So the second quote is, leadership is about taking responsibility, not making excuses. So I think it's the second part of the attribute that says you have to take ownership of what it is that you do and not expect everyone else to take responsibility for you. So I think if we shape our leaders today to understand that it is essential for them to be responsible, we could definitely see a difference in the world. Now, how can this attribute be developed in a language and literature class? So that was a question I was asking myself as I developed this presentation, and I tried to summarize some of the ideas that I worked with. So firstly, for integrity and honesty, I think it's essential to explain the importance of a culture of honesty, and for this, I established connections between the classroom and the real world, bringing examples of how corrupt leaders or leaders that lacked that integrity had a negative impact in their society, so that students can really understand the impact that negative behaviors in terms of integrity and honesty can have. It's also important to provide a safe environment where students feel comfortable telling the truth when they make a mistake, instead of avoiding the truth for negative repercussions. So it's important that they understand that it's better for them to say the truth and accept what comes next than to lie and just kind of navigate the situation without honesty. And finally, discussing academic honesty, which is essential for us if we want them to really produce better academic work. And this quote is important to me because it says, "It is better to fail in originality than to succeed in imitation." The way I focus academic honesty is in telling them that they have to be original, that they have very good ideas, that they have very original ideas, and that they should never try to imitate someone else's train of thought or someone else's arguments or thesis, and that they have to really own their own ideas instead of copying those of others. So for this specific point, I work developing guidelines based on the IB regulations. So it's important to go over these regulations to use the material so that they understand what the IB wants. I also devote part of my introductory lessons to the program to go over the definitions and consequences of malpractice. I found that usually students are only aware about plagiarism and not the other forms of malpractice as collusion or doubling work. And I think it's also important to teach students how to use specific websites or other material that can help them make good references and follow main citation systems. They have to understand why citations and referencing have specific elements that should be there and how it is important to acknowledge someone else's work. I personally recommend a website that's called Cite This For Me that has helped me a lot in the past. Now, another point that I use is when assessing students' work, I always include criteria for academic honesty because I think it's important that they understand the importance of referencing skills and that they practice it as often as possible. So I usually do this assessing it from the ATL perspective. Now, in terms of respect, I find that it's essential to establish guidelines and expectations about how the interactions in your classroom are going to go, so that they understand that respect is important, that everyone's opinion, voice, perspective should be respected and valued, and that no one can mock or interrupt anyone, and that no one will undermine anyone else's opinion. And finally, about taking responsibility, I think it's important to establish a culture of honesty and accepting responsibility and have an open discussion of what are the struggles that they face when they need to accept responsibility, because they have to understand that we know it's not easy and that sometimes it's easier to take the easy way out, and how we can talk about this with an open heart. Finally, thank you for this for listening to this presentation. I hope you enjoyed it.